and the voice kept whispering my name. I am unerased, unerased. No longer hiding behind yesterday. Unerased. You can break my heart, but not my soul. Unerased. You can shake my world, but not take control. I found a woman I was always meant to be. She was waiting underneath the pieces left of me.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to UnErased with Trish Lacy. I'm so happy to be here with you guys for episode 2. I'm still a little bit nervous, but before we get started, I want to thank you guys for all of the incredible responses to our premiere episode. It was really great, and you just showing up means more than I can say. We're here to tell the truth about experiences that made us feel invisible and remind each other that none of us has to heal alone. So, if tonight is your first time joining us, welcome. You don't have to have read my books to understand tonight's story, although it would be great if you went out and bought it. If you don't have it yet, I'm going to give you all the context you need for tonight's conversation. So, last week we talked about what it means to feel erased. Tonight, I want to talk about how that happens. Because I didn't wake up one morning and suddenly realize I was gone. I disappeared gradually. And the woman living through it all didn't call it disappearing. She called it being a good wife. She called it protecting her family. She called it fighting for her marriage. She called it love. Tonight, I'm going to take you back to the time when I went from trusting my husband to questioning him, to questioning myself. And believe it or not, part of this story involves a grocery store receipt and a dozen eggs. So welcome to UnErased. So I'm going to start off with this story. A receipt slipped out of my husband's wallet and it landed on our kitchen counter. I picked it up and there it was. The description read, General Merchandise, 12 count. General Merchandise, 12 count. I knew what that meant. At least I thought I did. Condoms. My heart started racing and I thought, this is it. I finally caught him. So guess what I did next? I called the grocery store. Y'all, I called the grocery store. I read the SKU to the woman who answered the phone and I waited until she looked it up. And she came back on the line and said, ma'am, those were eggs. A dozen eggs. Not condoms. Eggs. I remember standing there in my kitchen feeling embarrassed, ashamed, and completely confused because the real question was no longer, what did he buy? The real question was, what had happened inside my marriage that made condoms more believable than eggs? To understand how I became the woman calling the grocery store to investigate a dozen eggs, I need to take you back to the birth of my daughter. This is the part of the story that I told in chapter 6 of Erased in My Home. I had never been one of those women who spent her entire life dreaming about becoming a mom. It wasn't because I didn't want children. I just wasn't sure I'd be good at it. I didn't feel like I had a mother's intuition. I thought mothers were always patient, always gentle. They knew it somehow exactly what to do. Meanwhile, here I am. I was thinking, girl, you don't even know how to braid hair, let alone you don't even know what you're having for dinner. How are you supposed to keep a whole human being alive? But the moment they placed my daughter in my arms, something changed. I became a mama bear. There wasn't a meeting that I went to. There was no orientation. No one had to send me a job description. I knew that this little girl was mine to love and protect. And because becoming a mother had changed me so deeply, I believed becoming a father would change my husband too. I thought our daughter would make him more responsible and present. I believed that our baby would awaken something in him that my love had not been able to reach. Looking back, I realized I was building our future around the man I hoped he would become instead of paying attention to the man he had consistently shown himself to be. I wasn't only in love with him, I was in love with his potential. We tell ourselves once we get married, they'll change, right? Once we have the baby, they'll change. Once we move, once life becomes less stressful, once they understand how much we love them, then everything will be different. But circumstances don't create character, they reveal it. I know that now. I didn't know it then. And at the time, I was just a new mom trying to hold her family together. People often look at women like that who stay and ask, why didn't you just leave? But we rarely ask, what was she trying to save? I was trying to save my family, the family that I believe my daughter deserves. Have you ever loved someone for who you believed they would become? If you understand that, type potential in the comments for me. We don't always stay because we can't see anything wrong. Sometimes we stay because we've seen something good and we keep waiting for that good part to become the whole person. Potential, there it is. Hope can be beautiful, but hope becomes dangerous when we use it to explain away a consistent pattern. 6 months after our daughter was born, my husband announced we were moving from Chicago to North Carolina. We spent 9 months building our Chicago home. I had chosen the nursery colors. I picked out the Ralph Lauren paint on the walls, folded her tiny clothes and put them in the drawers. I imagined her crawling around on those floors, taking her first steps there. For me, the house represented stability. It represented my future. Then he said we were moving. He called it a fresh start. Honestly, a fresh start sounded really great. It sounded good. I wanted to believe a new place might help us become a new version of ourselves. But sometimes we change the location while carrying the same problems with us. We move, we take a vacation, we buy the house, we renew the vows sometimes. Then we get there and discover that the problem packed a bag too. So I thought I was following my husband into our next chapter. I didn't understand that I was making life-changing decisions without having life-changing information, if that makes sense. So that's one of the things deception takes from you, your ability to make an informed choice. So yes, I did choose to move, but I chose based on the version of the truth I had been given at the time. And when the truth finally came out, the full truth, I went back and questioned everything. Would I have moved if I had known? Would I have stayed? Would I have sacrificed so much? But betrayal doesn't only change your present, it can make you doubt your entire past. So we arrived in North Carolina with all of our boxes and stuff, a baby, and my belief that this was our fresh start. But something didn't feel right when we got there. I couldn't explain it and I couldn't prove it, but my body was reacting to something that my heart was not ready to accept. When his phone would buzz, I would tense. He would come home late and my mind would start trying to account for the missing time. An explanation would make sense, but when I asked another question, somehow my question became the problem. I was too suspicious, too emotional, too insecure. I was creating drama. I was looking for something. After hearing enough, I started wondering whether or not he was right. Maybe motherhood had made me anxious. Maybe I was exhausted. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I just needed to stop asking so many questions. Maybe I was the problem. That's how you start losing trust in yourself. It doesn't always start with someone saying you're crazy. Sometimes it happens through hundreds of smaller moments. Your experience is dismissed. You're treated like your questions are accusations. Your reaction becomes a problem. But your body says, pay attention. And the person you love, they say, there's nothing to see. Eventually, you begin choosing their voice over your own. And that is where the disappearance begins. Not only when someone lies to you, but when you begin using their lies to silence yourself. And because I no longer trusted his explanations or my own instincts, I decided I needed proof. So we're going to move to chapter 7 of my book, which is called The Unraveling. And in this chapter, it begins I became a detective in my own life. And I did. I checked pockets, I studied receipts, I looked at timestamps, I watched his phone. I tried to piece together the parts of his life that did not make any sense to me at all. I believed the proof would give me my sanity back. If I could just find one undeniable piece of evidence, I could finally say, see, I knew I wasn't imagining this. But even when I searched and found nothing, I didn't feel any better. I felt relieved for a few minutes. Then the next unexplained call would come, late night or any strange explanation, and it would start that whole cycle all over again for me. That wasn't trust. That was hypervigilance. I wasn't living. I was monitoring. And then that receipt fell out of his wallet. General merchandise, 12 count. I thought I had finally caught him. And then the grocery store employee told me they were eggs. Y'all, I had called this woman's job, interrupted what she was doing, and asked her to investigate breakfast. I can laugh at the absurdity right now, but I hope she went home and said, you guys will not believe what kind of call I got today. I didn't laugh then. I felt ridiculous. And I didn't tell anyone about that call. Who was I going to tell that I did that to? So I kept that to myself. And because I've been wrong about the receipt, though, I started wondering whether I was wrong about everything. But these two statements are not the same. I misunderstood an item on a receipt, and I cannot trust myself. I made one mistake, and shame tried to turn it into a verdict about my entire character. That's one of the most disoriented parts about being gaslit. One incorrect detail can be used to dismiss an entire pattern. Suddenly, no one's talking about the secrecy, the late nights, or the shifting explanations. Now the conversation is about the date you forgot, the sentence you didn't repeat perfectly, or the emotional way you reacted. Your reaction becomes the focus. The behavior that caused everything disappears automatically. I was wrong about the eggs though, but I wasn't wrong about what was happening to me. Now, suspicion isn't proof. Anxiety isn't automatically fact. And I'm definitely not telling anyone to start checking pockets and calling grocery stores. Please don't have any grocery store employees blaming me for a sudden wave of SKU investigations for sure. But my reaction didn't develop in a vacuum. There was secrecy, there were inconsistencies, there was a pattern. And that receipt was not proof of an affair, but it was evidence that I no longer felt safe inside my marriage. That's a fact. So sometimes we become so focused on proving what another person is doing that we overlook what the relationship is doing to us. The question isn't always, can I prove this person is lying? Sometimes the question is, why do I no longer feel emotionally safe here? In a healthy relationship, you should be able to express discomfort without being mocked or punished or dismissed or made to feel like you're unstable. The other person doesn't have to agree with every interpretation that you have, but your experience should still be treated with care. For example, there's a difference between I understand why that frightened you, let's talk about it, and you're crazy, you always do this. One response creates clarity, the other one creates confusion. And confusion had become the atmosphere inside my marriage. While I was searching for evidence of what he might be doing, I was missing something happening right in front of me. I was changing. I was becoming the expert on him. I knew his moods, I knew his tones. I watched how he handled his phone. I listened for his car. But if you asked me what I needed, I'm not sure I could have answered you. That's how I was disappearing. And disappearing didn't mean I stopped functioning. I still got up, took care of my daughter, went to work, I handled the house, I cooked, I cleaned, folded clothes. I did whatever needed to be done. From the outside, I was present. But disappearing looked more ordinary than people realize. It looked like checking his mood before deciding what kind of mood I was allowed to be in. It looked like rehearsing conversations or rehearsing a question because I didn't want my tone to become the reason we never discussed his answer. It looked like noticing something was wrong and then immediately arguing against my own instincts. It looked like making myself quieter, easier to deal with, less emotional. It looked like I was being physically present with my daughter while part of my mind was somewhere else trying to solve another inconsistency. I was so focused on figuring out what he was doing that I stopped asking what it was doing to me. I still appeared in every room, but inside there was less and less room for me. I didn't call it self abandonment. I called it loyalty. I called it trying harder. I called it fighting for my family. I called it love. Eventually, there was nowhere left for all that fear, confusion, and pain to go. And one night, I sat on the bathroom floor of our North Carolina home with my back against the cabinet and my knees, my knees wrapped around my arms wrapped around my knees like this. And I cried so hard that I could barely recognize the sounds coming from me. I don't know if you've ever cried like that before. But I remember thinking, I have given everything to this marriage. What else am I supposed to give? And the truth was, I had already given away too much of myself. I had tried being more loving, more understanding, less suspicious, less emotional. I thought that if I could become the right kind of wife, he would finally become the husband that I needed. But you can't make a relationship safe by removing more and more of yourself from it. I want to take you to chapter 8, a passage in there that I kind of saved for you. It's called, the chapter is called Bare and Broken. There was a night I sat on the cold tile floor of our North Carolina bathroom, my back pressed against the cabinet, my arms wrapped tight around my knees. The porcelain was unforgiving, the air sharp with the scent of bleach and leftover steam from a shower gone long cold. And I sobbed. Not the kind of crying that trickles down your cheeks in silence, but the kind that rips through your body in waves, stealing your breath until you think you might collapse from the weight of it. When I wrote that chapter, I called the woman on that floor broken. Today I see her differently. She was exhausted, traumatized. She was disconnected from herself, but she wasn't broken. If I could sit beside her today, I wouldn't ask her, "Why haven't you left?" She was already judging herself enough. I would tell her, "You're not crying because you're weak. You're crying because you've been carrying a reality no one will confirm. And you don't need another piece of evidence to prove that you're in pain." That night didn't magically change everything. I didn't stand up, pack my bags, and walk into a new life. That's not how most awakenings happen. Sometimes you see the truth for 5 minutes and then fear sets back in, hope and love and responsibilities convince you to close your eyes again. But something had shifted in me. I was beginning to understand that this wasn't only about whether my husband was cheating. It was about who I was becoming while I was trying to find out. So maybe your story doesn't involve an affair or receipt or a grocery store, but you may understand what it feels like to become smaller just to keep something together. So I want to ask you a question. When did keeping the peace begin costing you your own peace? Maybe you became quieter. Maybe you stopped asking questions. Maybe you started managing someone else's emotions while ignoring your own. I did that a lot. You don't have to share the details. But if this feels familiar to you, you can simply say in the chat or to yourself, I'm finding my way back. I don't want you to judge the version of yourself who's trying to survive. You weren't foolish because you wanted to believe someone you loved. You weren't weak because you tried to hold your family together. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for trusting us with that as well. You made decisions with the information, strength, resources, and support you had at the time. Sometimes we stay because we're trying to save more than a relationship. We're trying to save our family, our future, our children's security, the promises we made, the life we imagine, right? And when that relationship ends, we don't only grieve the person, we grieve the future we believe we were going to have. That grief is real. So this week, ask yourself privately, what part of me have I neglected while trying to manage someone else? Choose one small way to reconnect with that part of yourself. Call that old friend. Open the journal. Play the music. Return to the dream. Say no without explaining yourself for 20 minutes. Do one thing that reminds you, I still belong to myself. You still belong to you. Now, let me tell you what happened the day after the egg receipt. I know you want to know, so I'm going to tell you. I went to bed embarrassed and confused. And part of me thought I had allowed my suspicions to take over. And maybe I was really searching for something that wasn't there. That's really what I was thinking. But the next afternoon, my husband was downstairs in the kitchen using his phone. I was upstairs using the iPad, and then it buzzed. One notification appeared, then another one, and then another one. His phone had synced with the iPad. Messages began appearing on the screen, and the first one was from one of his coworkers. It said, "Stop cheating with Natalie. You have a family. You're better than this." Then a voice message came through from Natalie. I pressed play. I heard her laugh. And then I heard her call my husband Poppy. I remember staring at that screen as the room seemed to shift around me. The day before, I called the grocery store looking for proof and I found eggs. Now I wasn't searching at all, and the truth had found me. I walked downstairs holding the iPad. My husband looked up at me and I asked, "Are you cheating on me?" What happened next changed my life. But that's where I'm going to stop tonight. Next Sunday, I'll tell you how he responded. I'll tell you about the number saved under a fake name. And I'll tell you what happened when the man who had denied everything could no longer outrun the truth. Until then, remember, getting one detail wrong does not mean you're wrong about everything you're experiencing. You deserve relationships that don't require you to become a detective to feel safe. You deserve to trust your instincts, and most of all, you deserve to trust yourself. Thank you for trusting me with your hearts tonight. Keep healing, keep becoming, and remember, you were never erased. Until next time, good night, my friends.
Yeah, I came back different. They counted me out. Now count it up. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I learned how to smile with tears in my eyes. Built a whole world around beautiful lies.